The Malta Catacombs, or, by its proper name, the Hypogeum of Halsaflieni. Okay, won't be saying that again. The Hypogeum is a Neolithic subterranean structure dating all the way back to 3000 BC, around 5,000 years ago, making it the oldest underground structure in the world. It is thought to have been a sanctuary and necropolis, with archaeologists having documented the remains of over 7,000 people. So this place is massive. The catacombs were first discovered in 1902 by accident, when workers cutting cisterns for a housing development broke through its roof. Excavations for the site began the next year and continued all the way until 1911. Any findings of importance were given to the National Museum of Archaeology. During excavations, the catacombs were open to the public starting in 1908. Any real attempts to preserve the site didn't start until 1991, when it was closed to the public for 10 years. More than likely, the structure had originated from a natural cave. They then used the natural cave as a crude template to expand upon. They of course used primitive tools over a very long time. Since the catacombs first started as a natural cave system, it's very possible that there are pits and caverns that continue on for an exponential depth. A broad range of objects were recovered from the site, including intricately decorated pottery vessels, stone and clay beads, shell buttons, amulets, axe heads, and carved figures depicting humans and animals. The most notable discovery was the Sleeping Lady, a clay figure thought to represent a mother goddess. The original inhabitants seem to have worshipped their dead relatives, because they believed that the dead could influence the fortunes of the living. Along with the remains of over 7,000 people, a small percentage of the skulls they found have an abnormal cranial elongation, possibly from head flattening or binding when they were infants. But the skulls they discovered have one very peculiar trait. They were missing a fossa media. The fossa media is the crack that runs from the center of the top of the skull all the way to the back where the skull bones originally fused together. For comparison, this is a normal skull, where the crack across the middle and the center crack that leads to the back of the head are clearly visible. And here is the elongated skulls that were discovered without the crack. Now clearly something is strange about them, but the strangest thing is that the skulls were on display at the National Museum of History until about 40 years ago in 1985, when the people in charge of them at the museum decided to remove the skulls from the public view entirely. So now that you know a little bit about this strange location, I will get into the conspiracies. There are two stories that have been told over the years regarding the catacombs. I'm not saying either one is true, that is for you to decide. But strangely enough, the first comes from a refutable source, the National Geographic Magazine, issue number 78, August 1940. Although the details of the story are vague at best, this is what the story says. Many subterranean passageways, including ancient catacombs, now are a part of the island's fortifications and defense system. Supplies are kept in many tunnels, others are bomb shelters. Beneath the city, some of the underground areas served as homes for the poor. Prehistoric men built temples and chambers in these vaults. In a pit beside one sacrificial altar held thousands of human skeletons. Years ago, one could walk underground from one end of Malta to the other. The government closed the entrance to one of these tunnels, after school children and their teachers became lost in the labyrinth while on a tour of the catacombs, and never returned. The article states that, for weeks after the kids disappeared, you could hear wailing and screams from the underground, but numerous excavations and search parties could find no trace of them. So that sounds like your typical urban legend story with kids disappearing. It is pretty odd that there were 30 kids at once, and that it was a published story. But the second story is much stranger. This is how it goes. Just a week before the alleged disappearance of the 30 school children, a woman named Louise Jessup had visited the catacombs for the very first time. During her tour of the catacombs, she had convinced the guide to allow her to access and investigate one of the burial chambers that were adjacent to the normal path. It was apparently a small path that would have to be crawled through to be accessed. She was allowed access at her own risk, so she got down and crawled through the passage and emerged on a ledge. As she described, this ledge was to a seemingly bottomless cavern. She looked across the huge pit to the opposite side of the cavern. She could see a ledge on the other side with an opening, where she witnessed several giant humanoids emerge in a single file line. She described them to be around 20 to 25 feet tall and covered in white hair. She said they noticed her standing there and raised their hands toward her with their palms facing her. Then she said there was a sudden gust of wind that extinguished the candle she was carrying, which was her source of light. She turned around and started retreating through the hole. While she was crawling back through the hole in the dark, she felt a slippery, wet creature brush past her. She made it through without further incident to safety. Later, on a returning visit to the catacombs, she discovered that the path she had gone through was now completely sealed shut, and they told her that the original tour guide had never worked there. Okay, so this one is not possible to verify. So it is up to you to decide what you think for yourselves. Do you think either of these stories could be true? Maybe you have some information that I don't. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, if you liked the video, then please leave a like. That really does help me out. And subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching.